19.84. I'd entertain a motion to adopt the October 13th agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Greg, second by Kevin. All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries 7-0. Commissioners Herda and Meyer will be absent this evening. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
Play ball.
Play ball. That was play ball.
Play ball.
Next, we have a safety message from Commissioner Dahmerhausen.
Okay. I just want to cover again the severity of a pandemic that's going around and creating a lot of problems. We notice it heavily in the schools, our administration, our teachers, and everyone, all of the staff, all the people are struggling with it, and they're doing it very well, very hard to do. But the one thing I would like to see more of is people actually wearing masks. I run into it every day. I do it at work. I run into it. I find it terrible. This is my personal view, that they can't put on a mask to approach someone to talk to them. I shouldn't be, I'm protecting them, but they aren't protecting me. So I'd like to see more of that. Social distancing and the other things. I don't need to talk much past it. We hear it in the news every day. But I just want to repeat it, how important it is. So may we all do better. Thank you.
Thanks, Carl.
Thanks, Carl. We are at the citizens' comments portion of the agenda. We did receive a citizen comment in writing September 24th, after the last board meeting from a Mr. Frank Masters on Black Lives, on opposition to teaching Black Lives Matters curriculum in our curriculum, and that was emailed to all board members. He was informed that that'd be included in our minutes of tonight's meeting as a citizen's comment. So that will be done, and Assistant Clerk Weston will take care of that for us. So thank you for sending things in writing. The board commissioners appreciate that in advance, and we do read all of those. First up, we will have Dave Groth, please. Welcome, David. 3 minutes, and name and address, please.
Good evening. Dave Groth, 920 Columbia Drive here in Janesville. I have two quick topics. First is face-to-face conferences. The JEA is requesting that the Board of Education Administration remove in-person conference option for next week's parent-teacher conferences due to the uptick of COVID-19 in Rock County. The Gazette reported this morning the Rock County positivity rate, new cases Monday, was at an all-time high of 83%. The JEA asked specialists at Rock County Health Department regarding in-person conferences, and their response was that there would definitely be increased risk of spread where families are coming into the schools for conferences. That individual recommended virtual conferencing as an alternative. The second topic that I have is educational funding. The school district of Janesville is having to ask communities for monies for in the form of 2 referendums. Why is this happening? The district is forced to ask for more funds to operate and repair schools because the funding given to them through state and federal funds is not sufficient, and the revenue caps are restricting the district so that they cannot obtain enough funds in any other way. So how do we fix the funding mechanism for our schools? We vote. Our vote in November will decide whether elected officials put more emphasis and monies into public education in the state and federal budgets and put people into positions that will be strong advocates for public education. It is for these reasons that the National Education Association is supporting Joe Biden for president. It is the belief that the NEA, that Joe will put an educator in pro-public education person in as the Secretary of Education and increase funding to public education. I ask all voters to please vote this election with education in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Next, we have Renee Bliss. Hello, Renee. Welcome. Go ahead and use the podium. We need your name and address, please, for the public record, and we have about 3 minutes. If it starts running long, I just kind of give you a little wave, okay?
I am Renee Bliss, 1717 Green Forest Run, Janesville, Wisconsin, 53546. I always get the zip codes confused, I apologize. I'm here actually for a couple different reasons. One, obviously, being the recent information that I was informed that the Janesville schools is trying to start speaking on Black Lives Matter. I am concerned because there is a lot of misinformation, a lot of misunderstanding, and a lot of mixture between the organization and the movement. There is some things that the organization are doing, but what the movement is completely separate, which is what I've been a part of now for 10 years. I've been a community advocate and a victims advocate for 13. I lived in Milwaukee for several years and still connected with a lot of what's going on up there. I have 2 children now in the Janesville School District, and I am a Craig graduate. Yay! My concern is, even when I went to Janesville Craig, the racial atmosphere and racial inclusion was non-existent. Part of that is because I understand we didn't have a lot of minority students back then. I'm not going to list what year because I'm not showing my age. I'm not going to list my age. My concern, though, is that I've noticed the atmosphere, at least at Janesville Craig, has worsened since I left. There is a lot more minority students there. The attitude towards Black Lives Matter is based more on media than true information. I have made several attempts to contact different schools and come and speak to either the students or the teachers and kind of give them firsthand, I guess you could say, boots to the ground knowledge, events that we've done, reason why we are here, because I think that it is important if we are going to present information on such a politically or emotionally charged subject, we have to do it from an objective standpoint. Not to mention the fact that I suppose you guys have probably noticed, there has been an increase in minority families coming to the city. With COVID-19 especially, a lot of people losing their jobs, we're going to start seeing more minority families coming to Janesville because it's cheaper, safer, quieter. We have to create an environment where they are welcome. And something such as Black Lives Matter is going to be a way that we can open the door to bring awareness to the students that are already here. Having said that, because I know that our numbers in Janesville are increasing, I think now is the time for us to start working with the staff and teachers to inform them so they know what information to present to the kids that is based on people who are actually involved on the ground. I have marched and protested in Milwaukee, Kenosha, Beloit, Rockford, Chicago, Louisville, Minneapolis. I have met with families. I have spoken to different organizations. I feel very strongly for the movement. I don't know what the organization is doing, but I've seen what the movement has done for families. My second concern is with the Janesville schools, I see that we're probably going to end up closing down again very soon. And my concern is what is being set up or planned for the special education kids. I have a 4.5-year-old. if the schools end up closing, set up like one day a week. There's 2 kids in the early childhood at Jefferson. I don't know the numbers for the other schools, so forgive me. But set up like one day a week, keep the routine going where the kids can come in and do their speech, their physical therapy. Because especially autistic kids, who I also work with, you have to keep a routine for them to retain the information. We don't want our kids to fall behind. I don't care what child it is, not just mine. So I'm concerned because I see our numbers are increasing, and I just want to put it out there to take into consideration a plan. The spring, we didn't really know, we didn't see it coming, and I get that. But now that we know, we have to set something up for these special education kids. The ones with IEPs, the ones that need therapies, the ones that have to keep in routine. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee.
Thanks.
Thank you, Renee. Next, we have Carolyn Robb. Hello, Carolyn, come on up and right behind the podium, please. If you give us your name and address for the record, and we try to limit it to about 3 minutes.
Sure. My name is Carolyn Robb, and I'm on 3337 South River Road in Janesville. I've been advocating for children with special needs for a good many years, and I just wanted to offer some information today on Americans with Disabilities Act as it relates to service dogs. There seems to be some confusion at the school district level of the difference between a service dog and a emotional support dog. A service animal, the ADA defines a service animal as a dog that is individually trained to do work or perform tasks for someone living with a disability. These tasks may include things like alerting people who are deaf, guiding people who are visually impaired, calming a person during an anxiety attack, reminding someone with depression to take prescribed medications, or protect a person who is experiencing a seizure. Now, the difference between a service dog and an emotional support dog is a service dog has to be specially trained for the person that they're with. The emotional support dog does not, is not specially trained. Where the service dog's allowed, public areas generally, local government, stores, hotels, office buildings, schools, just to name a few. Are emotional support animals the same thing as a service animal? No, emotional support animals, or ESEs as they're also known, are not the same thing as service animals. The ADA does not recognize dogs who solely provide emotional support or comfort as a service animals. Unlike service dogs, emotional support animals do not require any special training, okay? There seems to be some confusion at the school district level on the difference between the two, and the assumption is easily made, evidently. I have received a letter today from the school district indicating that they are identifying a service dog as an emotional support dog and not as a service dog. So I wanted to take this opportunity to let you all know what the difference is so that you're aware as well. Anybody have any questions?
Well, Caroline, if you get that letter to the superintendent, I'd appreciate that. The letter you received
Yes,
from a district employee?
I did that.
Okay.
I talked to the assistant superintendent today, or the assistant, gotcha, Mr. Garner.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's all I needed. All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes the citizen comment portion of the meeting. On the consent agenda this evening, we have the minutes from September 22nd, resignation, retirements, and appointments. I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So done.
Motion by Greg, second by Dale. Any questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Next up, we have the superintendent with a superintendent update.
Oh, because of the mic.
Well, I thought we were due for a little change of pace tonight with my report. It seems that for the last 8 months, we've had to deal with very difficult subjects, and I've had to ask you to make very complicated and difficult decisions. And so my report tonight is about some positive news that the district recently received. For the second year in a row, so it's a relatively new ranking and recommendation, Forbes magazine has rated across all 50 states the best in state employers. And so this is for larger employers only. You have to employ 500 people or more to be eligible for consideration in this ranking system. In the most recent edition of this that just came out in August, it was based on surveying of employees that was done back in October of 19 through May of 20. There were approximately 80,000 employees across the country who were part of panels and surveys to get direct and indirect feedback about their employers or other employers in their field. And so employees were surveyed, again, not all, but a sample of 80,000, asking them about their own employer or about an employer in their own industry, but in a different, that employs, so, people in a different school district could give recommendations to about, do you understand that Janesville, for example, is a good place to work or not work? And when everything was said and done and the dust settled and the rankings came out, I'm excited to report that, first of all, Commissioner Dommershausen works at the number 2 ranked employer in the state of Wisconsin. The top 5 are up there on the list for you, and you can read those for yourself. There were 3 school districts in the state of Wisconsin that made the top 51 list, I guess, if you will. And Green Bay was the first and highest ranked school district, and Janesville is the highest. And again, we're not number 14 out of the school districts. We're number 14 out of all employers with 500 people or more employed in their regard. And so we're number 14 on that list of all employers. And so I just felt like it was time for us to have a little good news and to, let you know as a board that your policies and procedures are working and they're working well. We know that in today's world, the ability to attract and retain talent is absolutely essential to delivering our promises to our kids, making sure we have talented staff in every position, whether that's an administrative role, a teacher role, custodial role, food service team, the support staff team. We have to have those folks, and knowing that folks see this as an attractive place to work, and getting this kind of recognition absolutely helps us to move that agenda forward. So thank you for your ongoing support as a board of the district's policies and procedures, and giving the administration the support they need to make this a desirable place for our employees to work. Questions? Hearing none, I yield the...
Thank you, Superintendent Pufall. That's great news. Next on the agenda, we have Angela Lynch speaking on the Equity Actions Update. Welcome, Angela.
This down a little bit. That's it. Yep, that's it. Good evening, Commissioners and Superintendent Pufall. Thank you for having me. We're just going to give an update. So I came to speak to the school board in March of 2019. Some of you may remember. So I'm going to give you an update on what we've been doing since then. I just want to remind you that this work has been going on for many years, more than 10 years. I haven't been doing my position for that long, but prior to my position, there was a person doing equity work in our district at the district level. So this has been going on for a long time. It's not new this year, okay? So the first slide that I have up there is just to explain the difference between equality and equity. And as you can see in the top graphic of the bikes, everyone has the same size bike. And so that's equality, right? They all have an equal bike. Every bike is the same. For equity, we want to make sure that the bikes are fitting the person, right? So in the second part of that graphic, you can see that a person with a disability has a special bike, a person who's taller, a person who's shorter, and a child all have bikes that meet their needs. So we just want to make sure that we're focusing on equity in our district and not just equality, because everybody might need something a little bit different, and that is okay. All right, so this is the visual that we use to show what we're doing in our district. And these things, again, have been going on for several years. We have implemented Excellence for All, which is based on the DPI model of promoting excellence for all, and that's focusing on closing the achievement gap between our student groups. That being said, there were 4 areas that were found through lots of research to be the most important, and the 4 are around the blue circle. 2 of them being staff and student relationships. 1 is effective instruction. And those 2, our school create teams are working in each building. We have a school create team. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But those are the 2 areas that they're focusing on. And the other 2 areas, one of them is school instructional leadership. And we have a steering committee at the district level that oversees the work of all of the equity efforts in our district. And the most important is a stakeholder committee, which I will talk a little bit more in a minute as well. And that's with students and community members that are able to give us input that helps us make decisions that benefit all of our students. Oops, sorry, I didn't press it hard enough. Okay, so the steering committee that I just mentioned plans professional development mainly for the district and oversees the create teams and the stakeholder committee. So our goal is to have equity for all of our students. And one of the things that we worked on is a professional development opportunity last August on microaggressions, which I reported to you that we were planning prior to it happening last year. And then this year we had professional development for staff related to racial justice. And so just talking about those issues and how they impact our students and how we're going to work together to support all of our students. So one of the things we're going to be working on this year is planning a 21-day racial equity challenge, which people can sign up for if they choose to. And there will be things like a challenge, just kind of to challenge yourself to do something every day for 21 days, because then it becomes a habit, right? So that's why it's called a challenge. And it would be like one day you watch this video, another day you read this article, another day you do this, right? So we're going to come up with 21 different things for people to do, and they can participate in that. That's one of the things that we're working on. We're also working on other professional development opportunities that we haven't had our next meeting to plan those. But that's what we have so far. And then our CREATE teams, that stands for Culturally Responsive Education for All, Training and Enhancement. And every school has a team. And those teams are able to do the work in the buildings that we are wanting to have done from the district level. So for instance, I am not able to go to every school to provide professional development, even though that would be wonderful. So every school has their own team that's able to do it. So at the steering committee level, we plan things that we give to create teams to do in their buildings, and they also come up with some of their own, and they have some very creative ideas that they've used. So those are something that we want to be sure that we're supporting. And the exciting thing this year is there are a lot of people who have decided they want to join the teams, and we have over 200 people on all the teams in our building. And I would say it was probably closer to 100 to 120 the past couple of years. So this year we've had a huge uptick in the number of people that have signed up to be part of their CREATE team. So that's very exciting. And then we have a stakeholder committee. This is an example from a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, of some students that were part of the stakeholder committee. This particular picture we took in this room, actually, of the students holding up signs supporting the YWCA. So that's why they're holding signs up. But just to give you a picture of the people who are involved, there are some community members, some staff members, and students that are in the photo. And the thing that's really exciting about our stakeholder committee is that we have representatives of students who are Black, students who are Latino, students who are American Indian. We've had Muslim students. We have community members who are American Indian, and Hispanic and Latino, and African American. And then we also have white staff members and students and community members as well. So it's a really nice mixture of lots of different people from different backgrounds that come together, and we all are able to share with each other some things that are going really well and some things that we might want to be working on. So we've learned a lot from our students. It's something that I think is crucial to our work in this district, and I will tell you, I don't know of another school district close by that has a stakeholder committee. I'm not saying they don't, I just don't know of them. And so I feel like it's really important in our district that we have this. So kind of unique to our district, I think, as well. So as you all know, you just passed a board policy called Equity Non-Negotiables. And really that's a compass to guide our work with equity efforts, and we appreciate your support in that effort. We want to focus on core values, and so those are the things that we want to make sure that we're addressing district-wide. And so what I'm going to do is kind of talk about each one of those bullet points and what we're doing to address some of those things that you just passed in your board policy. One of the things that we're doing at the district level is that we have a district improvement plan goal that you may be aware of, that 90% of staff will participate in microaggressions and equity work. At the district level, we have that, but then also in the school improvement plans, we have some schools that are choosing to have that as their school goal, and they are having additional 80 or 90% of staff members that will participate in different things throughout the year too. So that's the overall goal. So the first bullet point is about every student being known by name, strength, and need, which is one of our promises, but it also says that participation will be, in our programming, will be representational and equitable. So that means we want to make sure that the equity is happening, back to the bicycle metaphor at the beginning, and that we have representation from different groups, such as our stakeholder committee, right? We want to make sure that all of the students in our district feel like they are part of our district. And so in that way, we are supporting this effort. So some of the things that we're doing, we're focusing more on increasing the numbers of students of color participating in AP and honors courses. We have eliminated course fees, which has helped students who may have been a barrier for. Some students have been able to visit HBCU campuses, which are historically Black colleges and universities, and so those students have had the opportunity to tour and visit. We adopted Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a holiday, and we have the Janesville Multicultural Teacher Scholarships. So those are just some examples of things that we are doing to try to help keep things equitable. So the next bullet point on the equity non-negotiables is about improving our educational system and professional practices to eliminate achievement and opportunity gaps. So that just being said, our equitable educational system is not just our school district, that's bigger than us, right? And so we can do what we can do from our vantage point about equity. And I think that our district is really doing a good job taking a look at that. One of the things that we're focusing even more on now is this equity rubric that was created for our new resource adoptions. So if we're getting a new resource, such as the math resource that we just got, Bridges for elementary students, we would vet that through this rubric to make sure that it is going to be representational of all the students that are in our district and not just coming from one perspective. So when we're looking through those, there are checkpoints on that rubric that we look at to determine that. So that's a really great thing that helps with the equitable education system. Okay? We want all of the next bullet point is about culturally relevant, rigorous, and supporting a growth mindset for our students. So we want to make sure that what we're offering is culturally relevant. Sometimes things can be coming from one perspective, and then some people don't feel like they can relate. And so we want to make sure that it's relevant to all of our students. And then we have to break down barriers for students that need that. That's one of the next bullet point, and really wanting to be sure that we are addressing those. So some of the things that our district has done is our early literacy task force that we have created will help students be even more ready for school. And that is a barrier for some students as they come to us in P4J. So that's one thing. One of the things that we have as a goal as a district is 90% of our students will graduate with an academic and career plan. And that will help all of our students that are able to move forward in their careers if they have that. So that's a really important goal. And also, our school resource officers have been meeting with staff and students to talk about disproportionate citations that have happened in the past, and so really working on that together. I know the school resource officers have had a couple of meetings with students already, and my understanding is that they have gone very well, so I'm excited for that to continue this year. And then we want to focus on data, and we want to use an equity-focused lens when we're looking at data to make sure we're not just looking at the overall picture, because sometimes when you break it down into smaller categories, you can really understand that there are some groups of students that maybe are not achieving as high of standards as other students. And so we want to make sure we break it down that way so that we can address each of those groups, those subgroups. And so at the beginning of the year, we shared data with every school leader at our LDI. And then we also shared it with at the new staff orientation. And it's data that our district pulls together every year to try to understand if we have any gaps or anything like that. So I'm going to show you two of the slides that we actually used with them. And this is district level. It's not at a school level. But this is achievement for ELA as English Language Arts, and it's showing the percent proficient for elementary, middle, and high down the left, and then the subgroups are Black, Hispanic, 2 or more races, and white students. And as you can see, we would want all of the students to be pretty much at the same percentage. It doesn't mean that there are the same number of students, but we want the percentage of those students to be at the same level. So as you can see, our white students are at a higher percentage than the other students in our district. And so that just shows us that we have some more work to do with our Black students, our Hispanic students, and our students from 2 or more races to help that be more equitable, because we want all of our students to be achieving at the same level. Does that make sense? And then if you look at math, there's a little bit more of a gap between, especially in high school, between white and Black specifically and Hispanic. So we want to make sure that that's equitable as well. So these are actual numbers from 2018-19 school year. Okay? And then the last one is the last bullet that we have on the equity non-negotiables. I'm going to read to you. It says, all School District of Janesville policies, procedures, and funding will be aligned with the school district's equity non-negotiables and will be leveraged to eliminate inequities. So our goal being we want all of our students to graduate college and career ready. That's the goal. And so in order to do that, we have to make sure that all of our students are achieving at the same percentage rate. So that's what we're working on. And those are some of the examples of the things we're doing. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Michelle?
Thank you for that. That's a good summary, and we are doing a lot. You're doing a lot. Your team's doing a lot, and I also appreciate you gave a similar presentation at PPC last 2 months ago on those the steering committee and community committee, a stakeholder committee. My question would be, when can we get the data tables for what you just showed for ELA and math for 1920?
That's a really good question. Allison might know the answer when we would be able to get.
Have the forward assessment this year, so we won't have data for this.
We won't, so because of COVID, the students were not able to take the forward exam this past year, and so we won't have the same kind of data to look at for last year. So we can compare it to previous years, but we don't have it for last year at this point due to that.
And Allison, forgive me, what's the reason for only using forward and not STAR or anything else?
We do use STAR too, so and STAR also has what they call like a pathway to proficiency, so that it aligns with the forward exam. So we specifically used the data from the forward exam because it's from the state. It's a state assessment, and the STAR is a local or district assessment. So.
Okay.
we wanted to be consistent with how the state is analyzing the data, but we do track all of that data as well through staff.
Okay. Thanks.
Carl?
Yeah, it's just kind of a minor one here. You've done a good job of identifying these problems we obviously have. But have we found out specifically what's causing them, the cause? That's the effect. We need to know the cause and then drill down to that. I know right now it's tough because of the pandemic, but at the same time, it's an excellent time to be preparing. What are we going to do when we have the opportunity? Because these children really deserve this. Otherwise, nothing will get better. So,
Definitely.
thank you. Appreciate the work.
Sure. Absolutely.
Did you have any?
We are always, every year, this isn't new, we are always addressing what is causing the root causes of all of these things and trying to figure that out. There are many different things, I think, that cause it. I don't think it's one particular thing, but we are looking at many different avenues. And one of the things that I think we have focused on, because I think it is helpful in moving things forward, and it's one piece of the puzzle, is professional development for staff. Because I think the more they know and the more they understand where students are coming from and how they learn, the better they're going to be able to address those things. And so that is a huge piece of what we're doing right now. That is certainly not the only thing, but it is definitely one of the things we're focusing on heavily.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Without a doubt, I believe we're doing all we can to educate our children, regardless of race, creed, or color, whether they're black, white, brown, yellow, whether they have learning disabilities, no matter where they come from on the their abilities they bring to school, regardless of what social economic place they fall. That we're here to teach each child and give them the education they need. And all these things, like early literacy, individual learning programs, IEPs, getting to know them individually, understanding cultural differences on learning, how children learn differently. Some can read, some need to write, some need to hear. All those things that educators understand far more than I ever will be. But that being said, what I'm thinking about is Black Lives Matter.
Okay.
And I had a lengthy conversation with Kevin Levy, used to work here, happens to be a black dude, lives
Yes.
in Beloit. Had a great conversation with him because I was trying to understand more clearer because, I was raised in Janesville at a time when we might have two black families in the community. Eric Beck and Harvey was a teacher at Franklin, right? And the first time that I actually came in, had to have daily interaction with people different than myself, primarily, I'm talking about black guys, was when I was in the service. And wow, little Janesville is very stereotypical, and we had a lengthy, and just bear with me, I'm just trying
You're
to.
fine. You go right ahead.
We had a lengthy conversation on what I thought white privilege meant and what he thought white privilege meant. And then we had a lengthy conversation on what it was like to be a black man going into a job interview and being stereotyped. And being a black man knowing that a black man in Janesville, there was boundaries, and they were palpable. You could feel them, you could witness them, and being a black guy, woman for that matter, child, there's just roadblocks, and there's walls that have to be taken down, right? I'm not sure anybody can disagree with much I have to say so far. But, so, then, all of us on the board have been getting different kinds of emails. Not just 1 or 2 points of views, but 3 or 4. And this gal actually struck a chord with me, and Kevin and I have both agreed there's Black Lives Matter, and then there's Black Lives Matter. And so if you take that organization, geez, you get in there and you start to research about their foundations. You take that, in my opinion,
Right.
put that over there, and what do we want to do? And Kevin and I both agreed on this, that what does the Janesville School District want to do and say to our students in our community, how we want to address this very hot topic that's going on today. So, now that I gave you my elevator speech. It was a little long, I hope. Yeah, it wasn't that long, no. But in all seriousness, I was, because then you hear things about, there was, maybe a couple teachers that have Black Lives Matters posters, and they were told to take them down, or, so what are we doing? Or are we thinking about, what are we thinking about, and where, I don't know, how far have we progressed, or where are we going with this, this topic? If you, I know it's a big one to answer.
Yeah, well, and of course, I have my own personal experience and my own personal opinion. One of the things I've told a lot of people is I grew up in Milwaukee, and so I grew up around a lot of people who were very different from me, and a lot of people in Janesville and other small cities in the state of Wisconsin didn't have that opportunity. And to me, it's an opportunity. It's, so I think that there's a lot of fear, and I think that fear is not needed, but it's there for a lot of people. And so my opinion about it is I agree with you. There are two separate things. There's a statement, Black Lives Matter, and there's an organization, right? And I don't think that anyone in our district has ever said anything about, that I'm aware of, has ever said anything about it, the organization. I think there are a lot of staff members who feel really strongly that the statement, Black Lives Matter, is really important. And I think the confusion, what I've learned the confusion is related to people are thinking that when people say that, they're saying that Black Lives matter more than other lives, and that is not the case. What people are saying is they're saying Black Lives Matter too, and they should matter just as much as other lives. That's what they're trying to say. And so I think that confusion is where a lot of the issue lies. It's not a one is better than the other. It's a we want everyone to be equitable, back to what I was talking about at the beginning, right? And so if we want everybody to be treated equitably, that means we need to take a look at, are we treating everybody equitably, right? Which is why our SROs are meeting to figure out why some of our citations have been disproportionate and why there are issues in our state with a lot of things related to disproportionality, not just in our district. So it's not just Janesville, but it's something that's really important for people to be thinking about. It's not something that we need to preach about, but it's something that we need to think about. And as educators, I think it's important for them to be thinking about it so that we can help understand where our families and our students are coming from. I only know my experience as a white female, and I don't know what it's like to walk around with brown skin. I try to understand, and what I try to do is listen and hear other people's perspectives, because that's the only way I'm going to learn. I don't know. I have not had that experience. But if people listen and really try to understand, I think, like you're saying that you took the time with Kevin to talk to him, then you understand perspectives that you haven't experienced because you didn't have that experience in your life the way that you have been. You know, I have not had that experience because I am a white female, and that's just, I've experienced life through that lens, right? And everybody has a different lens. And so our job is to really understand people who have different lenses than we do. And it's common empathy and compassion, and that's my personal stance on it. But I think that is where, you know, we want to be focused on when we work with our staff members and students.
Thank you. I guess, you know, as a board member, I'll have to think about, you know, I can sit here and give you my opinion on what I think, but I'll have to think about, because I have a little different perspective, I think, of where I think at this time, where we should go as a district with
Okay.
this particular issue
Okay.
about Black Lives Matter. So I'll have to think about how I can affect change through board policy, or I'll have to talk to people about that, because I do believe, my personal opinion, based on the conversation I've had with Kevin, that we should preach this, that Black Lives Matter, because Kevin and I both agreed that if we say this more openly and more overtly, that our young Black men and women will say, you know what, maybe they really do care, maybe they are real serious, and this is making me feel good about this. You know, we need to have action with it too. So that being said, I'll have to do some serious thinking about that. And I understand the equity part about the education, but this is a cultural mind shift, I think, for many people. And then I'll just end with this, my own little experience when I was in the service. I was at Scott Air Force Base, real close to East St. Louis. And my friend Philip happened to be a black guy, took me to East St. Louis for some beer. And I know Greg knows exactly what I'm talking about. And I felt some of that. Very uncomfortable being the only white guy in a black bar. Talk about feeling uncomfortable. Not afraid, but like, what the hell is this all about? You know, this is very different feeling of being alone. So, I think I'll just let it rest at that. Thank you. Anyone else? Greg?
I have a thing or two to comment or question here. I'm going to focus on the equity side of things, just as a mindset and a way to think about things. And when I think of equity, yeah, Black Lives Matter. Actually, they really do. But what I think of is, and why I have been here for 12 years, is the education of students. What do we really do? So when I think about that, what do we really do? And paint the picture, because I know that students progress through our school district as well as many other school districts based on their age. They do need a certain amount of credits to ultimately graduate, but they progress based on their age, not based on their achievement level or knowledge. So what do we do for a fifth grader, so 10, 11 years old, that truly educationally is third grade? What do we do? Because we're talking equity, so we need a different bike. But yet they're in the fifth grade with the other fifth graders. And, you know, this kind of speaks a bit to, I mean, there are many ways of tackling this. And I know from a funding standpoint, it is difficult for us to manage that one student as well as the others, all within that fifth grade place in a neighborhood type school. But that is actually a question that I do have. What do we do?
So, yes, when in any classroom, it's very challenging because you have many different you have students that may be above grade level, below grade level, at grade level. So you're always trying to meet the different needs of students in the classroom, and that is part of the very challenging job, of a teacher in the classroom as well. So one of the things as Angela was sharing the data, Michelle asked about the data that we use on our district assessments as well. What we've really been spending a lot of time in the last few weeks as we've been meeting with all 21 of our buildings is we've really been looking and analyzing at that data and looking at what are the gaps, what are the standards that these students in different groups don't know, and what do we need to do to help get them there. And so we have what we do as our core universal curriculum that we want everyone to have, to be a part of, so that they have access to high level, high quality, rigorous curriculum. And then we have to look at where are their gaps. So then what we do is we have to look at different times throughout the day that we may work with students in different small groups to support and close some of those gaps. And then sometimes within our own instruction, we have to look at differentiation and different options during that instruction that can reach the different learning styles and different varying levels, of our student. And so we're always looking at curriculum that not only provides rigor for our students, but also curriculum that provides differentiation and support to help kids access curriculum. So whether that's tools within the curriculum that support our English language learners and how we're going to build their vocabulary, their background knowledge, or whether it's tools for our students with disabilities and how do we look at the standard, but what does that standard look like at their level so that we can help them slowly close that gap. So it's looking at, here's our level of curriculum that we have for this grade level. Here are the students that are not at that point, but what are the different tools, resources, and the way we support and group students that will help close some of those gaps.
If I may add to that, thank you for that great explanation from really kind of the classroom building level. At the district level, if you stop and think about the work the board has done in recent years, it really is about this very issue. And so I'll use math as an example. Up until a few years ago, our high school math curriculum was disjointed and to non-existent. At the high school level, teachers were frankly creating their own scope and sequence. Middle school was using significantly outdated resources that were not aligned with the current standards and rigor that exists in today's world. And at our elementary schools, I think we had a total of about 26 different math resources being used that varied wildly from one school to the next and one grade level to the next. Fast forward to today, for the first time in the 2021 school year, we've invested $750,000. We, meaning this board, has spent $750,000 to put high-quality, evidence-based instructional math resources in our classrooms, K-12, to provide the right training and support for our staff to know how to use those resources, and that's a work in progress right now. And the data that we see, when you really go dig into it, while we've got work to do in a lot of places, math is where our data is the worst, and it's not a surprise when you know what the narrative is behind the scenes. So we're doing the work that we need at the district level, and you're doing the work you need to do at the board level to reinvest those resources, and that was that last bullet point that Angela read to you in that equity policy, to try to change the narrative for all of our kids. Because frankly, when I looked at that data up there, I'm unhappy about the gap that exists between groups. I'm also unhappy at where the top level group is because it's not high enough. It's not good enough, right? We have to do better than that for all of our kids.
Thank you. So I started at that point because we kind of talked about you see the educational piece. Now you add in a couple other dimensions to that particular student. Maybe that particular student comes from a not as wealthy of a family or even middle class, or matter of fact, they're struggling to make it. Well, that leads to certain behaviors and things that they have to deal with coming to. So when we talk about what causes some of those things, well, that's a potential cause. And that cause is what happens to students before they even get to our buildings. We know that there's plenty of things they have to overcome. And now, if the teacher that they have has come from Janesville, their experience is much like Kevin mentioned, as they don't have an idea of potentially what the student could even have to go through to get there. So one of the things is, what can we do? From my viewpoint, as first and foremost, and I probably said this before, is I want the teacher to be open to that student. Let them tell their story. Don't box their story in based on their own personal experiences, where maybe when they were growing up, they were supported by their parents, because that's not universally true. We as board members, we have seen, whether it's expulsions or various things, we've seen where parents don't always support their kids. But those are still the kids we have to educate. And those are the kids that ultimately, that's where school makes a difference. Now, we can add a different dimension. We can have them as a child of color. Now, if by chance you happen to watch the news or any other thing, and you as a teacher, this is Greg's opinion now, approach a student from the standpoint of a sense of fear based on their behavior, because often they feel comfortable sharing their behavior at school because it is a much more comfortable place. And then if the teacher's response is to go, I don't want to deal with that, leave. Now let's fast forward and we put them in middle school, high school. They leave and they're going, what did I do? What did I do? Just leave. So who do they interact with? Probably the school resource officer. And now they're already with an attitude. So probably is a higher likelihood of a citation. So when we look at the, kind of what's in numbers, they don't always tell the full story. They tell a story. Or I would say, even from what I've seen and as my children share, often, if it's somebody who, a student that you would be less familiar with their background, then you're quick to say, behavior issue, let's move them on. I don't want to deal with that. Where if it's somebody that you think you have maybe a few more things in common with their background, you give them a moment to regroup. So I share that because I know the boards that I've been on over the 12 years and some commissioners that really helped to change things. And thank you to Commissioner Pete Severson when it came to dealing with expulsions and the whole process that changed with that. I point that out because many of the expulsion practices we had some time ago were disproportionate to certain population groups. And now it seems to be much more leveled out for some practices. But the things that we do and the leadership has put in place takes us so far. Takes us so far. So we can share it in LDI with the building leaders. And the building leaders can share with the teachers and other staff. But what do we do to kind of this plan, do, act, check? Where are the checks at? So ultimately, part of, and I'm not saying this as any individuals, but this happens because of the backgrounds that we have and the natural biases that we have can lead to these fears and things that we can have, and just lack of patience and understanding when it comes to students that we have to educate. So then so how do we respond to that? Now, a lot of challenges that the teachers have to deal with as you're trying to balance these aspects of different students in class. So if you happen to be, and I'll use a black boy who happened to be maybe slightly above average, he got treated pretty well. And I'm speaking of my son. He got treated pretty well. Now, is it because of what he was presenting? So they felt comfortable? One of the reasons why I'm sitting here on the board is I wanted my son to have a different experience than my daughter did. So when we talk about the evolution, do I believe we're better? We're better than we were 20 years ago. Not nearly as good as we should be. All right, I'll not continue with that one. But then as we think about fundamentally, a lot of the other things that we need to do we have faith and respect for the students? That's a huge thing. We should, naturally. But do we have the faith and respect for all students? That's what we absolutely should do. But not more importantly, equally important, we have how many staff members in the district? 1,500. All of them should be respected. The reason why I say that, because of the connections that they have. So, and unfortunately, I don't remember the gentleman's name, but having a conversation with him at Kennedy, he was in custodial staff. And the amount of students that he interacted with, and he was asking them, hey, how's it going today? Are you focused on this? Are you focused on that? So he just was showing that he cared was enough to put a smile across the student's face. It did not matter their background. It was just a sense of caring. So, that's some of the things that we have to promote. We have to say. We have to see if it really happens. Couple other thoughts here. One of the comment that Kevin made, and I thought it was really important, whether we talk about the Black Lives Matter movement or the organization, we won't get into that. And he made the comment, this is a hot topic. It's been a hot topic for many, many, many years. The difference is now, technology. Everybody can see some of the experiences that many of us face. And that's what has made it much more of a hot topic. So, and I would hope to say some of that has led to more staff wanting to participate in the create teams. Because this is ultimately how we get better, is understanding one another. Because I would say, I have never had any sense of any discrimination when I'm face to face with a person and they know me. When they don't know me, it's much different. So one of the goals that we have, and one of the promises that we have, and we can see many of those things in action. Know every student by what? Name, strength, and need. I'm fairly certain the name part gets done fairly well, because I've heard principals and others say that. The data can help kind of drive the strength part, but the need, I believe, is probably the missing piece, because sometimes the need is, as I mentioned earlier, give them a moment. Now, does it need to be guided and help them through some of those things? Yeah, but that could be the need that they have. As we look at the bikes, that's the bike that they need for that particular moment. So when we look at kind of this big picture, and sorry, I need to go. When I look at being the only black person that has ever served on the board here, and they're getting choked up because I'm picturing what Kevin said. Being the only white person in the barn. I'm pretty much the only one all the time, just about everywhere. No, it doesn't hurt because I've gotten used to it. But this is not what I grew up with. Although St. Louis has its racial issues, but the people that I knew was a spectrum of people. And everything that we're doing to promote jobs and building a wealth of a community that people would want to come in and live in, it becomes fundamental to say, what respect do we have for the people, regardless of their backgrounds? Because they're coming from a whole different world of many issues and things. And when I know it is people that might not say it anymore, but have the mindset, look at that behavior from that little boy and girl, they don't stand a chance. Could have easily been somebody said that to me. Matter of fact, a professor at the university pretty much said that. I appreciated him, I loved him for it, and I love him now. Well, he's dead now, but I loved him because he gave me that added little drive to say, no, I can be successful. Not just me, but all the non-white students, all the poor students that come from the other side of the tracks. I say all of this, and I thank you, Superintendent Pufall. I believe it was back early June that little bit of some of this I may have said, but I asked Superintendent, are we going to ever really address this? As we get the emails on Black Lives Matters and Marxism and all this other stuff, it's like, we got to address this. Because I know the good work that we're attempting to do. but it has to still filter down. So if there's anything any of us can do, look and reward the teachers that do the right thing. Look and reward them. Are there some? Yeah, absolutely. Those of you that know Sam Loisel, love him because he made my daughter feel welcomed. He made my daughter feel welcomed. Took a young lady who struggled with social studies and all of that, completely changed because he cared enough to actually get to know her. So we have to create an environment where staff, students feel like they belong and can use their own unique backgrounds, talents, perspectives to their fullest potential. We're most effective when we, and thank you, Angela, because she does it, listen. She'll go, I don't know, but I can listen. And I saw her interacting with the students, and they appreciate that. But when we listen for unfamiliar perspectives and respect the differences rather than fear the differences. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
I just want to say thank you, Greg, for sharing your story. It is a very, takes a lot of courage to be the only person of color in a lot of circles that you have been, especially in our district. And I appreciate you taking the time to share your perspective.
And we love having you on the board. We do. The Create teams, Angela, it's outstanding to have over 200 people participating. I did a little looking. I don't know where, when people call and say, what are we doing? How are we addressing this at Craig High School or at Lincoln? Could we have a way, or is there a way to have that on the website so they have a contact person? Because the question comes, and I think it's fair for them to be able to contact that school. We always encourage our parents to go back to the first point of contact, which is the school, and perhaps they'd like to volunteer. I'm also curious if we have a Create team in the ESC, a separate Create team. Do we? That's its own Create team?
That's a good question. No, we do not at the ESC. We are going to be doing professional development for ESC staff coming up very shortly. We've just been trying to get the school year started,
Sure.
but we're planning on doing that for the entire staff at the ESC.
Sure, thank you. And I know we have a lot of people that travel through this building, all shapes, all colors, and I think how we react, like Mike, the custodian, Mike, right? The custodian, yeah, Severson, the custodian at Kennedy, they liked him better than they liked anybody else in that building. So he was an amazing resource for that school, and I don't think people intentionally don't want to do that. And the school resource officers, the SROs, we are blessed in Janesville to have the relationship that we do. I know that Kim Perenboom informed me that we were selected to present at the State School Boards Convention, and I'm not sure if we're going to do that or not on the partnership because the board convention is virtual this year, but their presentation on the relationship with the SRO and I believe it's Jackson and what they're doing, reaching out in the community, is a perfect example of something we are doing to try to break down barriers. So we certainly don't have all the answers, and we're not alone in that, but I do appreciate the presentation. It certainly is a passion of this board, and we have a policy, and we don't hide behind policies. We want to see policies work for us. So if Kevin wants to take a look at the policy and we need to make some adjustments to it to make it more meaningful or add other things to it, we're always open to that. We want the policies to be stronger that meet the needs of our kids and our staff. Other questions for Angela? Thank you. It was a lively, passionate conversation, which is what we appreciate as a board. I'm not quite sure how we represent that to the community, but we'll just keep doing our best to showcase the good things that are happening. All right, next on the agenda is Kim Perenboom with the third Friday count. Well, more than just the third Friday count, but welcome, Kim.
Good evening, everyone. So our third Friday in September count took place on September 18th this year. And our count data was due to the Department of Public Instruction on October 2nd. I just want to remind the board that count is different than enrollment. And as was outlined in your board packet on Friday, a student gets counted if they are present on that third Friday or if they were not present on Friday the 18th, if they attended at least one day prior to the 18th, or if they returned after the 18th, we still get to count that student for multiple purposes. Obviously, it has an impact on our revenue that we will be receiving, and then it also impacts items such as free and reduced lunch counts and our Title I funding. Highlights from this year's count were we have been forecasting a decline in enrollment for quite some time, and this year's count continued to follow that trend. We did go down 434 pupils from last year, landing us at 9,455 students. A bigger dive into the count this year showed that our early childhood count had significantly dropped compared to past years. A lot of that was primarily due to the fact that we were not able to assess students coming out of our Birth to 3 community programs because of COVID and school closure. Now those assessments and evaluations are moving forward at full speed. We're having a very difficult time keeping up, but we are getting the work done. But I expect our numbers to be about where they were. It's just that with the delay in evaluations, we did not have the opportunity to qualify the students and then get them enrolled prior to that third Friday count. We've known that our P4J enrollment was going to decline. Angela Lynch and her team did a phenomenal job of creating a home-based opportunity for P4J students to give those parents and families an opportunity to learn at home with the same P4J curriculum and materials that they're using in the classroom. And we were able to retain some families and students with that home-based model, but we still did see a decline in enrollment there of 109 students. Many of our families did not feel comfortable with any option that was presented to them, and though 139 students enrolling in homeschool in the school district of Janesville seems like a lot, that's also a statewide trend, is a dramatic increase in the amount of families that decided to homeschool for the 2020-21 school year. Our open enrollment net gain was also the lowest that it's been since the 2015-16 school year. Last year, we had a net gain of 201 students. We had 568 non-resident open enrollment applications to attend the district. This was 30 students lower than last year. And we had 466 applications for students who wanted to open enroll out. And this was a 69 student increase. Milton still remains the district that we compete with the most, obviously due to our very close boundary lines and proximity. It's an ongoing, predictable pattern that we just find ourselves with the school district there. So we will be waiting to see what does happen with our second Friday count, which is our last count of the school year. That count is also used for revenue purposes and calculation purposes, but that count is also what we will be using for staffing purposes for the 21-22 school year. At this time, I'd open it up to any questions or clarifications anyone may have.
I think it's important just to note what we see for the third Friday count as belly buttons. And ultimately, the financial side is FTEs. And we're going to get into that conversation in a bit more detailed as when the finance committee just want to point that out. So how does it affect the finances? It does. but we'll get into the numbers in more detail during our finance committee.
Other questions? Okay, thank you, Kim. All right, Scott Garner, item 3.4, consider approval of increase for substitute teacher pay.
Yeah, just back again. 4 years ago, I came to the board and requested that we increase the substitute daily pay to remain competitive with our cohorts. This pandemic has thrown us quite a loop, but as you see in the memo, one of the things that we really started to do in 2016 was to really recruit subs. And what I mean by that is not only do we increase the pay to make it more competitive, but we tried to, the best we could, make the environments that they come to welcoming and friendly, and certainly highlighted the principles that they have to help welcome our subs so that they feel comfortable in the buildings. We continue that practice. We want to continue that practice. There's some research that shows the more you can make people feel welcome, the more willing they're going to come back. And that's common sense, you would think, but we certainly want to make sure through thank you notes, through staff T-shirts, through we send out thank you notes from my office to make sure that people know that they're valued. That's the biggest thing. People want to be valued, and I think this move to increase the daily rate and the long-term sub rate is a great move to show that the school district values our subs. And even without a pandemic, this is something that we would recommend. We looked at it in September of last year just to see if we were competitive, and we had started to slip to the middle, as stated in my memo. But this will really help us recruit not only now, but in future years, the ability to get subs that would fill our teachers. And it's a strain on our buildings right now, fully recognized, and we know that the money is going to help, but it's not going to solve the problem. We all have to kind of work together and live through this pandemic as we go and just hold on tight. But I would ask the board to please approve the recommendation of a per diem rate for a substitute teacher at $140 and a long-term rate, which is 5 or more days, of $200 for substitute teachers effective beginning as soon as we can possibly get it in the system. It's technical. It's a payroll in between payrolls right now, but we can make it if the board would like to make it retroactive as of today. And I talked to Sue Winter this afternoon. She can make that work if the board so wishes. Otherwise, we can make it effective October 19th.
All right, Gail? Second. All right, so I'll restate the motion. It's to approve an increase in pay for substitute teachers to a per diem rate of $140 and a long-term rate for those served 5 or more days of $200 effective October 19th, 2020. Okay, Dale? Jim? Question, Michelle?
Not working. Oh, there we go. There we go. Can you explain the $200 for 5 or more days? So if they work 5 or more days, they get $200 per day instead of $140?
That's correct. And every district does it that way. If you look at the court, and I can send this to you as well if you'd like to see what other districts do. But if you commit to, and typically our district has been 10. On the 11th day, they get that long-term rate. We're recommending that it goes down to the 5, which is we've done that based on the pandemic. We've kind of incentivized people to do that. If they commit to us for 5 days or more, they automatically get that $200.
Is it consecutive?
Consecutive days. Yep, there cannot be a break.
Add that in there, probably add that word.
Sure.
Sure.
So Scott, to clarify, it's 5 or more consecutive days?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
That's
right?
how it's printed in our
Is that right, Dale?
literature as well.
Is that okay? Okay,
Thank you.
good catch, thank you. Other questions? Carl?
Yeah, I'd like to look at, because it's very, very unusual, but it may be able to be helped. I know where I work, one of the few companies in the state, maybe in the Midwest, that offer benefits available to part-time workers and that. And you can probably create a different tier of benefits for them as our company does and that. So that might be something to look forward to for especially the people that want to be technically a professional substitute And I know we have some of those.
We do. And to clarify, Commissioner, we do actually, if a substitute does sub for 12 weeks, sometimes they do qualify. If they do many long-term sub positions over and over throughout the year, we do have substitutes that do qualify for the ACA for benefits.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Dale, that would be a topic for the Benefits Committee when it meets, by the way?
You say so.
I say so. Go ahead.
If my math is correct, 140 divided by 8 means we're paying less than $18 an hour. And if you consider you work at Walmart for 15, I don't think we're giving away the kitchen sink on this. Just a comment.
Thank you. Any other comments? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries 7-0. Commissioners Herda and Meyer, Murray's right here. Meyer are absent this evening. Thank you, Scott. And Deb, you got that other word added. Thank you. All right. Mr. Dan McCray with the presentation of the 2020-2021 district budget. Everybody okay? Need a break? We're okay? Okay, you're on, Dan.
Great, thank you very much. So we were meeting with the Janesville Gazette a little bit earlier before this meeting, and Ben was like, so what do we call this budget? And I said, it's the final preliminary budget. That's the best way to frame it. Commissioner Ardrey referenced the fact that this coming Tuesday, next week Tuesday, we'll really be taking a deep dive of what you have in front of you, and what was published in the paper, if you will, was essentially a 30,000-foot view. What was referenced already is essentially we were really cleaning up to the last moment, if you will, as part of this budget package, the latest membership numbers as well as enrollment numbers. And the last piece of data that is still outstanding is the October 15th release of equalization aid. Now, you may recall we received a July 1st estimate, all right, but that's really based upon your your budget, if you will, for the 2019-2020 year. All right, but that's really before we report those final numbers fiscal year end to the state. I believe we'll see an uptick in our aid, more so than what we predicted. But again, we get that final, if you will, gospel version on October 15th, which is one reason, right, we want to essentially wait to publish the booklet, if you will, until October 16th, because all of our data will be finalized, all right, which is very good for us. Now, we're really close, all right, but it's really difficult to say this is the final budget until we have that final piece. So once we have that final piece, then again, we're going to be working with the Finance Committee to really essentially go through that deep dive. So that budget book that the board is accustomed to receiving, where we're breaking out Fund 10, we're going through equalization aid in detail, we're going through the revenue limit worksheet in detail. We're essentially telling, when we look at the budget that the board adopts, essentially by function number, right, that is where the money is being spent. All right, those are all the things, again. Commissioner Hayworth, it won't be like policy where you have a 15-minute meeting, right? So finance, and I know we have two commissioners here, it will most likely be a long meeting. So feel free to tune in. Feel free to attend as an audience participant. That's what we're going to go through in detail. One reason we're also having it on Tuesday is should the Finance Committee tell me to go fly a kite, all right, we have a couple days prior to the board receiving essentially everything officially for their board packet for essentially the public hearing as well as budget adoption and levy certification the following Tuesday. So that's a little bit where we're at. But we want to, because statutorily we're obligated to publish the budget as it stands. But again, keep in mind, it is not the final budget. But a couple of highlights. All right, because there are numbers that jump out, and we'll most likely go through this again, not only at the Finance Committee, but again during an element of the public hearing or for ever how long President Huth affords me the opportunity to present the budget the night of adoption and levy certification. So everyone should have gotten like this giant piece of paper online. All right. And what I wanted to take you through is keep in mind this year, all right, we have to count as revenues and corresponding expenditures, both our ESSER and GEAR funding. Also keep in mind that is not meant to supplant existing district programming, but to supplement existing district programming. So if we were to remove COVID-19 out of our memories and out of our lives, all right, our budget would be $3.4 million less. What we spend on the ESSER and GEAR, again, is to supplement, not supplant. So when we look at the expansion of Arise Virtual Academy and the addition of staff to that Arise Academy, essentially to bring our numbers down in our existing physical buildings, all right, that's nearly 50 additional staff members of varying FTEs, all right, that we're using ESSER and GEAR money to fund. When we look, if you will, at the curriculum content associated with our students at Arise, we're again using ESSER and GEAR money to purchase that curriculum. When we look at all these masks and hand sanitizer and additional cleaning of our buses on a daily basis by our provider, Van Gelder. When we look at perhaps an additional route that we're running because we have a, if you will, a quote-unquote hot zone and we need to reduce the number of students on our buses, that's an additional cost that we're allocating towards GEAR and ESSER funding. All right, so $3.4 million is a lot of money, but in a COVID environment, it goes really fast. All right, but we have to count it. So if you look and you go, look at all the additional money you're getting in Fund 10. Again, a portion of that is responsible, or is, I would say, our response, to COVID-19. So I also spent some time with Ben going over a really exciting element of our budget, and that relates to GASB, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. All right, and if I haven't lost you yet, I may in the next minute or two. When we lease equipment, all right, as we have done in the district, all right, and we do that to essentially spread out the cost, because when we invest in iPads for instructional purposes or Chromebooks or other technology to assist instruction in the classroom, those are huge cash outlays. So what we do is, we don't want to absorb all of that expense in one fiscal year. So as a board, you've taken action and administratively presented the opportunity to lease to reduce that payment. All right, but according to GASB, you need to record the full cost of those leases as a revenue and an offsetting expense, which is about another $2.6 million. You go, well, you got $2.6 million in revenue. It doesn't really exist. It's not money to spend. It's really an accounting transaction for us. But we have to record it, and record it not only per GASB, but according to Department of Public Instruction, which follows GASB. So keep those two elements in line when we look at, wow, your revenue's gone up. All right. Any questions on that? And that's kind of bullet point A and bullet point B as we're looking at that first box related to federal sources and other sources. All right, moving a little bit further down, we want to talk about debt service. We had a discussion at finance, and as last year, we had the practice of defeasing debt or prepaying debt. That allows us to save interest, that allows us to structure our debt for potential new debt, all right, such as the pending referendum question of 22.5. Or we know that we have additional debt to consider down the road, kind of phase 2, if you will, of addressing our mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and other facility needs down the road. So how we manage our debt is very key for us in terms of really strategically thinking about it. So this budget, you'll see a defeasance as well. That's item C. Item D, all right. Ideally, that's item D, if you recall, relates to our Fund 46. So Fund 46, this board almost 6 years ago now, in its wisdom, elected to create a Fund 46. And kudos, I did the same in my prior districts. Fund 46 was essentially an investment vehicle. If you had remaining funds at the end of your fiscal year, you could put them into Fund 46, and that transfer, if you will, becomes eligible for state aid. So that's a very good move that this district has done. If you will, and I'll use maybe a layman's term, it's kind of a sinking fund. Those are for projects down the road. It's not a significant amount of money, but it's an amount of money. All right, so we go back to Kim's presentation. We had, if you will, from a fiscal perspective, about a $750,000 swing, loss, if you will, in terms of open enrollment revenue. Right? How do we make that up? All right, that's $750,000. Now you're going to say, Dan, you didn't forecast that. No, right? No one forecasted COVID-19. No one forecasted that we would have a dramatic swing in our open enrollment. In fact, I think we were probably going to say, we're hoping to pick up some open enrolled students. That didn't really work for us. We also talked, if you will, and again, I'm kind of looking at the low-hanging large pieces of fruit on the tree, right, is the Janesville International Exchange Program, the last number of years, has contributed significantly to the district's bottom line. All right, and we've had this discussion. This last year, it was nearly $400,000. All right, now we know in the spring, COVID-19, where are we at? What's happening? Do we have JEEP? Do we not have JEEP? And you may recall in some of the previous presentations, we may lose $250,000 if JEEP does not come in its present form. Bob and his team has worked really hard in terms of getting students here online. But the revenue is not as robust as we would have hoped. So we're going to lose, if you will, contributing to the overall bottom line, about another $300,000 in revenue. And again, we'll have some of that specific detail if you want to tune in or attend the Finance Committee meeting on Tuesday. All right. If you just add up those two numbers, we're just over $1 million. All right. We have a little bit of other play within our budget. And so in order to make up for that, all right, really the best place to go, the most immediate place to go, is to move our capital expenditures related to capital maintenance, all right, out of the Fund 10 budget and into our Fund 46 budget. All right, that's allowing us to get to a little bit of that balanced budget. All right, granted, it's a kick in the shin or a punch in the tummy. It's not a decision we would like to make. All right, but reducing it this late in the game, all right, $1 million out of your budget, right? Again, doesn't come from paper clips and Post-it notes. All right. Moving a little bit down the line, Fund 80. Okay, last year, the district made a commitment, all right, to fund the early literacy program, which affects essentially all children, all right, within the school district of Janesville. All right, and so again, that's being proposed as another $50,000 investment in early literacy. And I know we've had information presented by Superintendent Pufall in terms of what that early literacy program looks like. All right, again, this is detail that we'll go over at Finance. Kind of move to page 2. All right, you're essentially going to see at that top box the 2018-19 to 2019-20, and if you will, the 2020-21 budget. And you're going to go, that's all funds. All right, that's all funds. It's a $160 million budget. Right? If we look at the growth, but you back out that roughly $6.2 million between ESSER, gear, and lease revenue, all right, we're really looking at a less than 1% growth in our traditional budget, all funds. All right, then coming down to that last box, all right, what we're essentially going to see, all right, is a $1.6 million overall increase in the levy. All right, and again, we're still waiting for that significant piece of information related to equalization aid on the 15th. That's about a 1.6 million equates to just over a 4% increase. That, if you will, is the 30,000-foot view, right, of the budget. The boots on the ground review of the budget, again, is Tuesday. And the document will actually be available on Friday.
You lost me on the 1.6 million, I didn't,
Sure. So last year, we'll say the unaudited levy was just,
where am I looking at?
sure, page 2,
Yeah,
last box,
yes,
okay, the 2 right-hand columns.
okay,
You'll see unaudited 1920.
yeah,
Right now, that audited, we
Okay.
actually received the draft this year, but essentially that's due to the DPI by 12/1, so that's why we still call it unaudited. So it's a levy of 40,708,000 and change. Okay, the levy moving forward proposed is 42,368,000 and change. That's a 1.6 million increase. The mill rate is still targeted to be $8.48, the same it was this last year.
Also, you said this 750,000, and you used the term open enrollment?
Open enrollment.
That's just the open enrollment piece?
Correct. And
That's,
so,
that's not including first or second Friday counts?
no, so when we look at it, right, so typically when we budget, all right, we're always looking at the fiscal year open enrollment cost. All right, so again, there's open enrollment numbers on the third Friday counts. We're looking at it really from a revenue and expenditure standpoint. And so the DPI provides a very nice detail by each student of essentially open enrollment costs for students leaving the district and
Yeah.
open enrollment revenue for students coming in. When we net that out, that's a $750,000 revenue hit or loss for us as a district.
And that's at 102 persons.
Right. So what you have to keep in mind there a little bit, just to further bore you, right, is that 102 persons is a makeup of 0.6 4Kers, 1.0 students K through 12, as well as regular and special ed allotments. So it's not a linear value or the same value for each student.
So then just simple math, looking at the count, which is 4 times as much, 4 times as many people, lost revenue, so I can multiply that by 4 and add that to the list.
Right. So what you're going to have, so just to maybe bring you back, right?
Like
So
3 million-ish.
right. So you got to keep in mind, right? So there's open enrollment,
Yeah.
and then there's our membership, as you know.
Yeah.
Right. And so membership, which drives the revenue limit authority. Keep in mind, there's a circuit breaker built into the school finance formula, a declining enrollment exemption, so we don't take that hit in 1 year. Plus, it's also a 3-year rolling average, right? So when we look forward, right, and Ben was asking this very same question, so what does the future look like?
Mhm.
I'll go back to Superintendent Pufal's crystal ball there. Our hope is those students will essentially come back to us, right? Whether they're homeschooling this year, whether they're open enrolled. We already anticipated 130 membership drop in this budget year. It's gone deeper. We'll receive a declining enrollment exemption, but there will be a ripple effect in year 2 and 3 going out, and that also assumes we bounce back.
So what number are you guessing?
For,
Well, I still haven't filled in that blank because our enrollment is down. How is that going to affect 2021 budget? Because our enrollment is down.
it
All
won't affect the
considering all those
2021
factors
budget.
and-
Right.
What's that?
So the membership
Yes,
really does not affect the 2021 budget.
okay.
And that's because you receive that declining enrollment exemption. All right, so that's that safety net that the DPI has as part of their formula. All right, so if, let's say, you cannot say, okay, well, if we lost 100 members, all right, at $10,000 per member, do we have $1 million less this year?
Right.
And the answer would be no, not this year. But you will have an effect in year 2 and 3 and perhaps beyond.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, for sure. If that declining enrollment exemption did not exists, sorry, I was searching for the word there for a moment, all right, then your kind of pathway, I think, that you were thinking would be absolutely correct. The exemption bails us out, as it will pretty much in every district. So there's a little bit of a listserv that I belong to, and of the nearly 24 school districts, all right, many were losing significant numbers for various reasons.
Other questions for Dan? The finance meeting is on the 20th, I believe. Is that right? At 4, or is what, 4:30? Okay. Dan, just briefly, the district put the Fund 46 in 6 years ago, I believe, as part of our 10-year capital improvement plan, et cetera, which forecasting forward was really designed for future capital needs that we had unanticipated, we didn't necessarily have budget for. So the purpose or the use is appropriate, it would seem. It's also one of the 2 places at the end of the fiscal year with a balanced budget that we can redeposit funds, correct?
Correct.
The other is OPEB, I think, right?
Yes, sir.
So the reality is, it's very fortunate that we have these funds available to us, and it's because of Greg's work with finance and pre-planning 6 years ago that 5 years ago that we're able to do this. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a Fund 46, and I'm not sure what you'd do if you didn't have a Fund 46 to access at this point.
Correct.
So appreciate that foresight, although we didn't anticipate a pandemic at the time. Other questions for Dan? So it'll be a lively, spirited, short meeting on the 20th, next Tuesday. I think I canceled my travel just so I could be here. All right, thank you. And next on the agenda, I believe, is Mr. Dan McCray to talk about the referendum.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Looking for my notes, and they're not here. So I'll go from memory. This Thursday, we will have another informational meeting scheduled. We do ask people who are interested in attending Superintendent Pufall and I present to register. Again, just so we can kind of keep control of the number of individuals we have. I will tell you that has not been a problem for us, simply because in our meetings, we've had no individuals seek to attend. So I believe you saw a video that was put together by Superintendent Pufall, Patrick Gasper, and a little bit of me, and that's what we're pushing out. That, if you will, is an abbreviated version. All right, it's hard to get a referendum down in a 2-minute clip while still providing some context and substance to the presentation. So I know Superintendent Pufall did his best in doing so. The video, I forget, is it 9 minutes? Wait, hold on. 30 minutes. Okay, wow. So 30 minutes. But it's well worth watching. And again, in lieu of having people attend, that's, I guess, the next best thing for us. So it's on YouTube. So a little bit better perhaps to watch on YouTube on your PC or your PC-friendly television versus Facebook. But we're really trying to put that information out there. Again, we continue to engage entities that would like us to come and speak. Superintendent Pufall and I were on a conference call with Forward Janesville today, and that, I believe, was very productive. Superintendent Pufall carried a majority of the water on that presentation. And again, we're also in the final stages of our last mailing piece. And again, that last mailing piece is to hit some of those hot topic questions. So again, why a referendum? How much will it cost, and what happens? Essentially, why? Why do we need to present this referendum to our constituents for their consideration? So again, we have a meeting this coming Thursday. If anyone is interested, RSVP on the website. That begins at 6 p.m. And then, a mailing coming out, and Superintendent Pufall and I are always happy to perhaps present to a group virtually, entertain questions in person. We are getting very little feedback. So no one's really calling. I think at first we did, particularly after that mailing. I know Patrick and I touch base, pretty much daily, nor is he getting a lot of feedback. So it's very quiet. And while perhaps that's okay, we do want folks who are engaged and ask very good questions, because that helps us formulate or think of things perhaps that we did not think of in terms of communicating information.
Questions for Dan? Yes, Michelle.
Can we see that mailer that's about to come out before it goes out, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
We do appreciate the support from the local business community and support of both referendums and the Gazette support of the referendum. I know it's always interesting. You've talked about nearly 75% of school districts in the state of Wisconsin have had to go to an operational referendum, and many people have asked me the question why that is true. And as I've shared before, Wisconsin's legislature put a task force together in 2017. Robin Voss put that together. They spent a year traveling the state of Wisconsin, interviewing people. It's chaired by Republicans Luther Olson and Joel Kitchens. And none of those outcomes of that research were implemented. So I guess the question really isn't why are people going to operational referendum? The question is, why do 75% of school districts need to go to operational referendums when they just finished a complete study of the school funding formula? And it states in the report that it's the first time they've reviewed the school funding formula in 20 years, which would take it back to 1997. So I think it would be time for our legislative leadership to step up and talk about, after the election, how we can leverage some of those recommendations. And we're passing a budget in October, a budget that started in July, and I'm not sure how people run their personal finances, but that's been out of date for a very long time. So I'm hopeful that the support of the business community will help us leverage and move some of those things forward. I'm sorry, that's my editorial, or as Kevin would say, my elevator speech. Other questions, comments? Thank you, and I'm sorry you're not having more attendees. I'm sure you guys would do a fabulous job, but sometimes no news is good news. We have a committee meeting next week, Tuesday, the 20th at 4:30. Do we have any other things scheduled? Deb?
Yes, we do. So as you said, next Tuesday, the 20th, Finance Buildings and Grounds, 4:30 here at the ESC. October 26th, which is a Monday, is the Personnel Policy and Curriculum Committee meeting, and that one is also at 4:30 here at the ESC. And then on Tuesday, October 27th, that's the next regular board meeting, and that one would be starting at 6 p.m.
And we have two board meetings in October, one in November and one in December, is that correct? And I would ask Commissioner Thompson to convene your benefits committee and get together with Tina Johnson. It's you, Kevin, and Carl that are on that committee, and try to get some benefits update in the next 45 days, please. Thank you. We are adjourned.